Yeah, so I will now take the sederant for the meeting of the East Kilbride Area Committee of the 15th of December 2021. I've already noted that we have Councillors Anderson, Buchanan, Campbell and Convery present. We have apologies from Councillor Margaret Cooper. We have Councillors Dorman, Dryborough, Fagan, Ferguson, Gray, Harrow, MacDonald present. Is Councillor McAdams with us?
Yes, I'm here, thank you.
Oh, thank you. We also have apologies from Councillor Miller. Is Councillor Scott with us?
Oh, Helen, Councillor Miller's arrived.
Oh, you're there. Oh, thank you. Sorry.
I thought Gladys was answering for me for a second there. I know we're going on well.
And is Councillor Stevenson present? No. But Councillor Wardor and Councillor Watson are with us. And we also have various officers present. I'll pass you back to the chair for today's business. Oh, you're on mute, Chair.
Thanks, Helen. David, you've got your hand up at the moment.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It's point of order and possibly item of AOCB. Chair, you'll recall I wrote to you in the email during the 14th of October regarding the East Kilbride Railway link to Glasgow and a decision by the Scottish Government, Transport Scotland, to curtail their investment and their plans for that line by stopping the dualling. You wrote back to me on the 20th, on my original email I was requesting that you use your powers to invite Transport Minister Graham Day and or Michael Matheson to address local councillors on the issue, and it's been confirmed by admin staff that it is within your powers to do that. You wrote back to me on the 20th of October to say that you were reviewing it and waiting in correspondence. I believe that correspondence now within the council, and I would formally request that we write as an area committee to Graham Day and Michael Matheson to attend a meeting of East Kilbride councillors to discuss their decision to withdraw the dualling of the East Kilbride Glasgow rail link. Thanks, Chair. Do you want to take it under AOCB or give a decision at the moment?
I might be commenting. I do remember that, David. Sometimes moved on from there, and we never had any. I know it was discussed in the media and different places, the executive committee, and I thought it had kind of been dealt with in some form. And you never come back to me or anything, and nobody certainly raised it for this meeting. So that's where we are at the moment.
Sorry, Chair. I think your email to me said that you've requested a copy of the Transport Scotland response, and when it arrived, we'll take it from there. So, as an East Kilbride Area Committee, I'm asking us to take it from there and invite these individuals to sit with us and hear our concerns and let them explain why they've taken the decision after promising to dual East Kilbride railway line to withdraw that. It's quite a simple request. It's not complicated.
Yeah. If we do that, it'll be into January sometime. Is that an issue?
It's not an issue for me.
Well, I'll take that under consideration and I'll respond to you as soon as I can. Once I'll read it later.
Sorry, Archie, it's not about under consideration. I'm asking for a decision today. We've got a group of East Kilbride councillors here and we can take the decision here and now.
Okay, right, I'll get one of the officials to write to them and see if they will come to speak to us. Okay, and I'll let you know.
Thank you. If you could include all the East Kilbride councillors, it might be helpful.
Yeah, I would do that. Okay. Right, we'll move on. Minutes of the previous meeting, pages 3 to 6.
Oh. Sorry to interrupt again, Chair. And Councillor McAdams had her hand raised.
Don't see it.
Sorry, Chair.
Sorry?
Basically, David covered. I just wanted to back what David was saying and just say, please, can we definitely write the letter to ask them? But because you then said that you were going to do that, I was trying to take my hand down and being a total disaster. So I apologise. So thank you very much, Archie.
Okay, thank you, Minnie. Right, we'll get these minutes done yet. Right, minutes of previous meeting for a correct record. I propose on seconder for those.
I'll propose them. I'll
Seconder?
second them, Chair.
Okay, well, I propose on seconder. Thank you very much. Right, item 3, preparatory budget for the estate improvement budget. Pages 78, submitted for noting. And it's Jonathan Reid who's going to speak to this report. Is Jonathan with us? Oh, there he is.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. So this is a first update from the resource. I understand you've had others from other resources at previous committees, but the first from Housing and Technical Resources in relation to our participated budgeting programme. I'm not going to try and say that too many times. What we had done for text is that we provided to Executive Committee 3 budget areas that we thought would be suitable for the PB element of the wider programme that's taking place across the council. One of these was the estate improvement budget, which I'll touch on today. The second was an aspect of the housing investment programme, and the third was the commissioning part of the community safety budget, which is the next item on the agenda, and I'll talk about in a wee minute as well. So the estate improvement budget, relatively small in budgetary scale. It's £40,000, and that's split across the 4 housing divisions across South Lanarkshire. And we see it as a real opportunity for local housing offices to kind of plug in the gaps that might exist between what tenants and other customers want to see happen in their area and what's on the likes of the wider investment programmes. So it's an opportunity for managers and officers to work with tenants and other customers to identify any improvements or projects that they think relatively small in scale that they'd like to see in their local area. And we think this is an ideal opportunity to add an element of PB into that by asking them, what is exactly you'd like us to spend this money on, and work with them to kind of develop the solutions to any particular problems that they come across. So we're not reporting anything within this report today. We're just merely highlighting that one project is underway within this budget area in Denham Green, in East Kilbride. And it's regarding complaints that we received as a service in relation to the existing bin stores and the drying areas inside one of the blocks. And work is now underway with residents of these areas, so that's both tenants and private residents as well, to identify potential solutions to this, whether it's upgrades, whether it's refurbishment, or simply a new kind of process put in place to make it easier for these facilities to be used by tenants. And what we're planning on doing is coming back to committee at a later date, and once that project's complete, and you can see the difference in terms of what people reported as the problems were, what we listened to in terms of solutions, and then worked with to provide actual solutions and costed solutions to residents as well, and then what the outcome of that has been, and hopefully have some happy tenants and happy residents saying that they've been listened to within their particular area. So that was the first one. As I say, it's a relatively small budget area. It's £10,000 is allotted to East Kilbride, but the project's not been costed yet, so it may be part of that, and then we'll look at doing some other projects with the remaining amount, or it may be the full amount as well. We'll have to wait and see for that one, but we will come back to committee and provide an update on how that project's gone. Happy to take any questions on that one, Chair, or if you like, I can move to the next budget area for us.
If you just hold on a wee sec. Jerry, I've seen your hand coming up and just disappearing there.
No, my hand's still up, Archie, and I want to talk to this issue.
Can I just say my screen doesn't tell me it was you, Jerry?
All right, no bother.
Okay,
Can I
Jerry.
come in just now or wait?
Off you go, yep.
Yeah. That was a good report for Jonathan. The only thing he omitted to say, I raised this issue a year and a half ago with housing as a local councillor for the area. So I know all about the bin stores. They're needing ripped down. They'll fall down before they're taken down. But I'll just put on record, Chair, I think participatory budgeting is the biggest waste of taxpayers' money that this country's ever seen. We're just going round in circles. I'm an elected councillor. I raised it because constituents came to me about the state of the bin stores and the drying areas. And here we are, a year and a half later, we're now going to spend taxpayers' money talking to people about the things they've raised with councillors in the first place. It's an absolute disgrace, but it just clarifies to me, totally, Jonathan's report there clarifies to me what a waste of public money. But the public will get to know about it, because at the end of the day, we're just going round in circles wasting money. Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Jonathan.
Thanks, Jerry. Okay, Jonathan, you can move on.
Thank you. So the next item we wanted to bring to committee today was in relation to another budget area that we put forward for the programme and was accepted by Executive Committee, which was the commissioning aspect of the community safety budget. So a bit of context into this one. This is a slightly larger budget area, totalling just over £100,000, which is awarded to the Community Safety Partnership on an annual basis. It changes year on year, and it's dependent on the overall council budget being agreed by the full council. So for 21-22, it was, as I say, over £100,000, and within that budget is then given to the Safer South Lanarkshire Board, which has representation from elected members to determine its allocation across different areas. Some of it goes towards funding particular posts, partnership posts within Police Scotland, the council, and victim support, and another part of it goes towards commissioning, which is essentially opening it up to all partners within the partnership to develop projects or initiatives that contribute towards the overall aims of the partnership and some of the priorities that exist within that. So on the back of all that, through the Safer South Lanarkshire Board, they've recently agreed a project for improvements to be made to the skate park to the rear of the Dolan Aquid Centre at East Kilbride. So this project is contributing to wider efforts from local organisations and local people to develop the area, to upgrade the facilities available at the skate park and the adjoining Universal Connections building. And they've asked for £10,500 to provide a couple of aspects of the upgrades. So this is looking at, obviously it's coming from a community safety angle, because that's where the money's coming from. So it's looking at improving safety within the park. Now, one of the areas is to increase security lighting, to cover any kind of dark spots that exist in the surrounding areas around the skate park, hoping to detract from young people or other people gathering in those areas and consuming alcohol or perhaps other activity, and ultimately causing a bit of fear and intimidation by skate park users, legitimate skate park users. And that's been reported from young people who use the skate park, reporting it to Universal Connection staff, who have then worked with them to develop a solution with that, which is to improve the security lighting that's available on the site. The second one is to try and attract families to come with their young people to use the facilities as well, and they've elected to try and build some benches, some sort of picnic tables, that kind of thing, to try and bring in family groups into the skate park, which again would create more of a family atmosphere, and provide facilities for them so they can watch their young people do the things that they enjoy doing at the skate park as well. So, as I say, this is £10,500, which we're looking to put into the skate park from the Community Safety Partnership. And again, once this project's complete, we'll look to come back to the committee with an overview of how that's gone. There's a lot of young people, local young people involved in this. That are going to be holding special design sessions that are going to be them involved in the kind of benches and where the light should be placed and all that kind of stuff. So it really is a project that's been led from them, which is really encouraging. Happy to take any questions on that one as well, Chair.
Questions from Jonathan? No? Okay. Right, thanks very much for that, for those two items, Jonathan. I'll let you escape.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Okay, if we move on, Education Resources next for noting. Where are we?
It's myself, Chair, Laura Mitchell.
How you doing, Laura?
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm delighted to be here today to go through the progress that Education Resources have made with regards to participatory budgeting around the pupil equity funding. So the update is on pages 11 to 20, and I'll take you through that report just now. We're asking the report to be noted today of the progress that has taken place. The first part of the report is just a wee recap on what I reported at the last area committee meeting. I thought it was important just to recap on that participatory budgeting allocation. So I'll not go through that verbally with you, but that's there just in the first paragraph of the report. Since the last area committee meeting, the schools have undertaken a rigorous consultation process with their stakeholders, and that has been led by a participatory budgeting stakeholder group in each school. That group has comprised of pupils, some parents, and also some staff members. What the group have done is they've taken examples of ideas from all their stakeholders. They've collected ideas in a variety of ways. Some schools did sort of outdoor parent coffee sessions, for example. Others looked at Google Forms to gather in some ideas. Others used sort of electronic programmes like Jamboard to create kind of post-it note boards of ideas with their pupils. And there was also lots of other kind of paper-based and electronic ways of gathering the information. From then, schools selected 3 to 5 options to go out for the vote, and the voting process took place. Again, schools looked at their own context to see how they could engage as many stakeholders as possible in the vote, and some opted for electronic options. Most of our secondary schools went down that route because that was the easiest way to get as many votes as possible from the school community. Our primary schools looked at more paper-based options. For example, some of the primary schools had lovely displays up with some of the options where pupils had, for example, made some videos on what the different options were, or put some posters up on what the different options were, and they put stickers up to put what their vote wanted to be. So Appendix 3, which is on page 15, it starts on page 15 and goes up to page 18, gives you a breakdown of each school. So it gives you the school name, what their participatory budgeting spend was, what the percentage of their PEF money was, and it also gives you the outcome of the vote for each school. So you can see there what all the different schools have voted for and what the outcome of that was. On page 19, Appendix 4, it gives you a breakdown of the number of pupils and the percentage of pupils and staff that voted. So for the East Kilbride area, we had 80% of our pupils vote, which is an incredible value to put on the vote, and it's really great to see that our pupils really have had a voice in this. Our staff, we had 72%. It was very difficult to put a percentage on what parents voted because families come in all shapes and sizes, so it's quite difficult for a school to put a number on how many families they have in a school. However, we do know that there were 3,224 parents voted in total. So you can see there that we've had a lot of votes. The majority, 63.7%, have been pupils, 28.3% were parents, and school staff was sitting at 7.9%. So it's been really great that the school communities have really had their say in this agenda, and that their ideas and things have went forward to the vote and are now being proceeded. So schools are now progressing with their spend to ensure that their participatory budgeting allocation is spent in full by the end of March 2022. The Central Equity Team are available to help schools navigate any challenges that they face to ensure that there's full spend by the end of the academic year. Some schools have indicated to us that their participatory budgeting stakeholder groups are going to continue throughout this process. So they're going to be looking at, the pupils will be involved in, for example, procuring some of the things and marketing some of the new initiatives of the spend, and on reporting the impact of that as well. And we're also gathering some specific school examples which we'll put into case studies for you, and we'll be able to share them at future area committee meetings. I'll now take any questions.
Questions for Laura? No. Oh, Ian Harrell.
It's not really a question, it's more just an observation. I find it interesting, that over a quarter of staff didn't bother to vote as to how this money was going to be spent. It was just an observation. Do they not care, or are there so many options that they couldn't come to a choice? I'm not expecting you to know that. just observing.
We did say to schools that we wanted all their staff to vote, and that included teachers, support staff, janitorial, cleaning, cooks, so the whole kind of school estate, so that the whole school community had the vote. So I'm not quite sure, maybe some of the, I'm maybe wondering whether maybe some of the catering staff felt maybe they didn't want to vote because they didn't feel their voice was important, maybe. I don't know, I'm just surmising, but it could be that maybe they've not been involved in things like this before, so maybe they feel maybe they weren't quite as involved. I don't know, but yeah, it's a good observation.
Okay, thanks, Ian. Anybody else? Okay, thanks very much for that detailed report, Laura.
No problem, thank you.
Thank you. Cheers. We move on to item 6, residents parking permit zones consultation. Submitted for decision. And it's going to be Colin Park.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, everyone. The purpose of this report is to provide the Area Committee with the results of the completed residents parking permit zone consultation, which will inform the committee's recommendation to our future executive committee. Section 3 of the report sets out the background to RPPZ, and paragraph 3.5 notes that the full council meeting back in September the 22nd, a motion in connection with parking permit charges was tabled and was subsequently agreed that the consultation with residents living in current RPPZ areas would be undertaken. Charging for permits was put on hold pending outcome from this consultation exercise being reported to the relevant committees. This is the second committee we're at, and yesterday's Rutherglen Cambuslang Area Committee, following discussion, agreed that the results of the survey should indeed be reported and put to the Executive Committee. The report sets out the results of this consultation exercise, and at section 4 it notes that section 4 notes the detail of the consultation, the numbers of letters issued to the various households across South Lanarkshire. Section 5 and appendices 1 and 2 sets out the results in a wee bit more detail. Paragraph 5.1 notes that 4,286 households were consulted, and as of 17th of November, just a few days after the consultation closed, we'd received 1,365 completed returns with an overall return rate of 32%. Paragraph 5.2 notes that response rates for a consultation such as this run typically between 5 and 30%, and with an overall response rate of 32%, this is at the higher end of the scale and indicates a good connection between the council and its customers and a general wide interest in the survey content. Overall, across all areas in South Lanarkshire, 81% of households chose the option to pay the £5 per year administration charge, which is £10 over 2 years, and to remain part of the RPPZ. Conversely, 19% wish to have their zone removed. Given the kind of scale of East Kilbride, members will note Appendix 1 a little bit more detail in relation to East Kilbride. So in East Kilbride, we had a return rate of 36%. And in Appendix 1 at the bottom, you'll note the kind of various return rates across the individual zones, ranging from Kirtonholme North at 59% down to the village at 28%. So again, indicating good engagement with the residents that live in that area. Similarly, in Appendix 2, you'll note that East Kilbride voted overall 72% in favour of retaining the charge and staying part of the zone, and 28% voted to be removed from the zone. And again, at the bottom of Appendix 2, you'll note the individual zones and the various details that are there. There's quite a lot of information there, so members can look at that in their own time. Turning to the recommendation, the committee is asked to note and discuss the contents of the report and provide a recommendation for consideration by a future executive committee. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Colin. I'll let Jo in first. Thank you.
Thanks, Colin, and thanks for the report. And I think it's correct that it'll be the executive committee, it'll be a decision-making committee of the council that takes the decision here. But it's right that the outcome of the consultation has come before us. And I think it's important to make the point that the consultation was a consultation based on the two limited options that the full council decided should be put to the residents. It does not include the option to say that the charges should not go ahead with, should not be proceeded with at all, which is what we originally asked the council to consider, and it's what councillors, certainly in last year's budget, removed from the budget process. and what councillors in this year's budget did not have the wisdom to remove from this year's budget process. What I was going to ask, Colin, can you tell us how much this consultation exercise has cost in terms of manpower and officers' time? And how does that compare with the amount of money this charge is actually expected to bring in this year? Because it seems to me like what we have here is a face-saving exercise that was put forward because councillors were otherwise unwilling to stand by their decisions.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, and obviously I won't answer all of the points there, Councillor Fagan. In terms of how much did this cost, I don't have that information to detail. It was undertaken by existing officers in relation to, so there was no kind of cost over and above envelopes, mailing, etc. It didn't include staff time per se. It wasn't additional staff that were brought in to do it. I can certainly pull that information together for you and share it with you at a future date.
I'd appreciate that, Colin, and I would just like to have that information so that when the paper does go to the Executive Committee, that we've got access to that information in advance.
Okay, thanks, Colin. Thanks, Joe. Jerry.
Thanks, Chair. Colin, just a wee thing in your when you summarised everything there and you gave a good.
Afraid you're breaking up, Jerry. We're not getting you at all, Jerry. Put 10 pence in the meter, Jerry.
I think Jerry seems to have frozen, but Councillor Miller also has a hand raised.
Yeah, I was just giving Jerry time to come in. Thank you.
Sorry, Chair. Did you hear me there? No.
No, not a thing.
Oh, sorry. Right, if I get back to what I said, Colin, when you gave your report there, you said that the residents agreed to the charge. Well, that's not factually correct. Right now, there's no charge for parking permits. There's a proposal. But Joe made a valid point there. We started in 1920 budget. It was £50,000 they were going to collect with parking permits. Now it's down to £25,000. And then when we get beat, as Labour still oppose people getting charged for permits, we had a consultation. And although you say it was envelopes, the time of officers, those officers could have been using their time for better things rather than get involved in a survey. As Joe says, a face saver. So, yeah, we want that information, Colin, long before it goes to.
Frozen again,
because right now, as far as I'm concerned, and the Labour group's concerned, we're opposed to the charging. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Jerry. Colin, would you want to come back? Or?
I think all I would say, again, through yourself, Chair, is in terms of the questions that were put to the households, that's obviously what came out from the exec committee, the full council meeting back in September. So those were the questions that we had to ask, and that's what was agreed. In terms of it being a proposal, with respect, Councillor Convery, up until the committee of the 22nd of September, this was being implemented. So it was postponed, it was put on hold. So clearly that will remain on hold until it goes to an executive committee and a decision is taken. So the questions that were put forward were the questions that were asked to put forward, and the results that I outlined a few minutes ago is what's come out from the survey. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, gentlemen. Gladys.
Thanks, Chair. Colin's actually said what I was going to say. I mean, surely if there was another question, that this should have gone through full council. And, I'd like to say I don't think it's a waste of money going to our constituents and asking for their views. It's never, ever a waste of money, because too often our constituents are saying that the council impose things on them. And you can't put a price on going and talking to your residents.
Okay, Gladys, thank you for that. Anybody else? Any new people? Any new points? Jerry.
Chair, if I can have a wee supplementary to my good friend Gladys. The only reason you went to the public, Gladys, was because you were forced to when Labour put the amendment or the motion forward. That's the only reason, or it would have been pushed through and the folk wouldn't have had a say in it. And people are still very unhappy that they're going to be charged for parking in their own street in the Queen's Highway.
Okay, thank you, Jerry. Just take your hand down. Graham.
Thank you, Chair. A question for Colin initially anyway is, I noticed in the report it says there were a number of, I'll use the term spoiled papers, people who said that they wanted the scheme but they didn't want to pay the fee. Surely that's not a signal that that should have been an option available to the people involved in the consultation. I take Gladys's point that you'll never have a problem with consulting people, but you've got to ask the right question at the right time to the right people. There's no point in MD can manipulate a quiz to get a response they want. I mean, I option added, it was a very limited. I'm not surprised you got the result you did, because they were the only two options available. There should have been a third option. And I think that was what the people were trying to say to you in the section where they were spoiling their paper and asking for the option of keeping the scheme but not paying the amount. It's quite simple. Thank you, Chair.
Colin, do you want to respond to?
Chair, again, thanks, Councillor Scott, and through yourself, Chair. Again, I'll just highlight that with 12 out of 4,286 households indicated a preference for want of a better term, a third option. The third option wasn't an option available for me to ask. However, what I would say is I think it would be a pretty obvious answer that would come out if you were saying to someone, do you want not to pay for something you've already got? My own view would be the answer would be an overwhelming yes for that. So that wasn't the option that was available. There was a proposal, and the proposal had been put forward and considered last year and in turn this year in order to recover the costs as set out in the Audit Scotland report from a number of years ago. The council has the ability to charge for discretionary services. That's what was put forward. Those were the two questions that we were asked and agreed by full council back in September to ask. So I understand the points that have been made. I think it is important to engage with our communities. I would also add that the results were surprising to me, that what we got back, because I did expect something different, but it proved to me in terms of the benefits of residence parking permit zones outweighs the £10 charge over 2 years, and the residents that live in and around the town centres, not only in East Kilbride and elsewhere, do recognise the benefits, and they were willing to pay. Those people that replied, of course, they were willing to pay what is a modest charge of £10 over 2 years, or £5 a year. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks for that, Colin. Can you take your hand down, Graham? You're muted.
Take it down.
Muted. Thank you. Monique.
Hi, thanks, Chair. It's just to say, I think the community consultation, no matter what the subject is very important. And I also think that what's come out of this consultation has been to do with the questions that's been asked. So from the information that's come out and what Graham has spoken about, is obviously it's been spoiled. Therefore, it flags up that just because that's, to me, this just would be the first part, which would mean that you would need to now, based on the information that's come in, put out a second part, because in private, any private business, that's what they would do. And I think that it's very important because this is public money. that we make sure that we tick all of the boxes and we make sure that we're completely clear and transparent. So I think that all this has done is just raise the fact that we need to now actually put out the second part of the survey, which is, completely normal for any feasibility study. You don't just put out one and go, right, we've ticked that box. You then look to see, right, that's what we've done. This is the information that's come in. Therefore, we need to now put out, some further information. So I'm looking on this as a positive. I'm looking on it as like the first part of the consultation, and now we need to put out the second part because it needs to be addressed, the amount of people that effectively, whether it was 1 or whether it was 10 or whether it's more than that, that's spoiled. The other thing I would say, Colin, is we don't, and we should never ask questions to get the answer that we want. What we should be doing is we should be asking questions to get the answers the public want to give us. Therefore, if they want to say, I don't want to pay, then do you know what? You're asking the question, so you just need to put up with what the answers that they give you. So I would like us to be clear and transparent. I want us to consult the public, and I would like us to put out a further survey. And I think that the questions should be agreed by all parties, and it shouldn't just be an officer's decision, because yes, you're there operationally, but we are here for policy and to make sure that we properly represent our constituents. So I think that even if it's just the ward councillors that you can consult, then I think that that's what you should do to make sure there's an agreement with the actual questions that are going out, the exact same way as what they did when we were at the equity committee and we knew that there was a problem, a cross-party group. We all work together, we all come up with questions, and they're the questions that council put out. And it was a very, very positive result and response that the council got. So that's what I would like to see happen.
Okay, thanks for that, Monique. Colin, do you like to respond?
Thank you, Chair. Again, just picking up on Councillor McAdam's points there, and I think it's important just to stress these are not officers' questions, they're not my questions, they're the questions that was approved at the Executive Committee, the full Council on the 22nd of September. Officers had no involvement in writing the questions other than to follow through on the recommendation from that committee. On the last point, with 32% return rate, which is at the higher end of engaging with our communities, less than 0.002% felt it necessary to add on their pro forma that they wish to remain part of the zone but not pay. I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, can I have a subsequent, please?
Certainly.
It was just say, Colin, I appreciate everything that you and all the officers do, so put that out at the start. Secondly, just please excuse my ignorance. So if the officers didn't come up with the questions, who did come up with the questions? And if I'm not being pedantic, I'm just actually trying to find out, who it was, because somebody came up with the questions for it to come, to committee for it, or after committee for it to be decided. And I don't have a problem, by the way, with officers coming up with questions. I just want it to make sure that it's done properly across the board. And when I say properly, I'm not disparaging anybody. I'm just saying I just want everything to be nice and clear.
Councillor, if I can, come in there. If memory serves me right, I wasn't at the full council, but I'm sure Councillor Convery and Councillor Fagan put forward a motion. Forgive me, I don't have the detail of it. There was a debate. Councillor Wardtop put forward another motion, and I'm fairly certain Councillor Anderson and Councillor Craig put forward a follow-up motion. The various motions were all debated. Councillor Anderson and Councillor Craig's motion included the questions. That's what was voted upon, and those are the questions that we took forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Colin.
Thank you. Ian Harrow next, please.
Thanks. Earlier on, Graham gave the reason for the people who kind of, I think, spoilt their papers or didn't respond, and then gave the answer that they were giving. I don't think anybody can give an answer as to why somebody spoiled a paper. There could be a myriad of reasons why people spoil a paper, and we could all give our own interpretation of that. And I think what Graham said was just kind of misleading and possibly wrong.
Okay, thanks, Ian. I think I've got Joe and Jim. I'm not sure who's first.
I think Jim's first, Chair.
Jim Borta.
My question was, as a follow-on from, the thing, it seems fairly clear. I'm surprised at the results, although anecdotally I know that some people have regarded extra parking permits as a saleable commodity, but that wasn't really my point. What I was going to say, if this is accepted, if this result is accepted as being, what people want, could I make a plea to Colin that because some of these areas are fairly large and the streets are fairly long, could we improve the signage, because a lot of people get caught out who don't know the area because the signage, you get a sign at the beginning of an area and then there's nothing, so you could maybe have a look at that if this goes ahead.
Okay, thank you for that, Jim. Joe Fagan, next, please.
Yeah, thanks. I suppose I don't want to prolong this, but I'm aware that I'm kind of following this issue much more closely because significant chunks of my ward are in the residential parking zone areas. And if you look at the paper, if it does, over half the permits that we are talking about are issued in the East Kilbride area. And I think we've got to take that into account. This is different from the situation we have in other parts of South Lanarkshire, where you've got parking pressures associated with a train station or whatever it might be. This is about one of the biggest undercover shopping centres in the country, having a system of charging for parking, the knock-on effect that had on all the surrounding areas. We also have the village, the knock-on effect that charges there having all the surrounding areas, and the need for, at that time, a response. And my position was that when the time came to review it, you would wait to see what happens to retail as we come out of COVID and what happens with the future of what the private operators of the town centre do. And then you would have the opportunity to look at the residential parking scheme in the round. As it happens, I think we're in a mess that has been created entirely by a penny pinching exercise on the part of the council, that frankly, we've got this charade to try and justify. So if I could maybe pick up as somebody who's been following this issue very closely and who, along with Jerry Convery, had put that motion in front of the council. I seconded Jerry's motion when it was put in front of the council back in September, I think. The situation that we had is that the budget decision had been taken to impose a charge. There was a backlash against that charge, and Colin will be aware of the emails from constituents and the inquiries from councillors that came as a result of that backlash. My judgment, and having spoken with the community council in my area, having dealt with residents' inquiries, is that there is support for the parking scheme. Views are mixed, but by and large, there is support for a parking scheme. We can take that's one thing we can take from the consultation, but there is not support for blanket charges, which, if you check the paper, are imposed on over 2,000 households right across the middle of East Kilbride. And if I can also just sort of defend some of my colleagues here. First of all, the point that Graham Scott made, he wasn't inferring anything that wasn't already set out in section 5.5 of the paper. It is said very clearly in the paper that one of the reasons for people spoiling their papers is that they indicated a preference on it, that they would rather the charges, the permits were retained, but the charges were not applied. And if I come to the point about who designed the consultation, Colin's explained that. Politicians designed this consultation. The officers have had to operate with the decision that was put in front of them by politicians who, rather than defend their position that they adopted in the budget, have come up with this exercise to try and justify it. The option that I believe would command the most support, and if we want to talk about the value of the community, or to take that point from earlier, the value of actually consulting to find out what the community really thinks, rather than designing a consultation to get the answer certain people in the council really want. If we go through an honest, open, transparent consultation, you would have asked people,
Do they want the charge at all? And I'm pretty confident they would have said no, because that's what the constituents getting in touch with me are saying. That's why I think this exercise is a charade. And this is actually why, when we look at the relatively modest saving that we are getting this year from imposing a charge, I think when you weigh that against the cost of a consultation that has been designed as a political fix, I don't really think it's been worth the effort. And the concern that I have going forward is that that charge will not remain at the level that has been set. It will, the pressure, we're looking at future years of austerity. I do believe there will be pressure to increase that charge as we go forward. And I do think the situation we have in East Kilbride, because of the sheer scale of the permit zones, it does make it different from other parts of South Lanarkshire. So I repeat what I said earlier. I hope I've tried to clear up some of those inquiries that we've got, but I don't want anyone to be under any doubt or any illusions that this exercise is frankly, to my mind, credible. And I don't blame the officers for that. The officers have implemented the decision of the council. I'm blaming the politicians in the council that voted for a limited, rigged consultation exercise, and that has to be exposed, and it will be exposed when this comes before the Executive Committee.
Okay, thanks for that, Joe. Ian, is that a legacy hand you've got up? Graham Scott.
Yes, thank you. I mean, I hope that my good friend Councillor Harrow wasn't trying to say that I would openly try and mislead, which obviously I would not do. So hopefully Ian can come in and just clarify that. I would never openly try and mislead. What I did point out was what is in, as Councillor Fagan said, what was actually in the report. That a number of people, in their form of spoiling the paper, wrote down a specific solution. They didn't write weird stuff on a paper or say, damn the lot of you or whatever. They proffered a particular solution to this problem. So if some ignored the directions that were got from the ballot paper and went down this road, I think it's reasonable for me to say how many more under suffering said, I really don't want to pay for this scheme, but I want the scheme, or said, I'd rather save the money and not go for the scheme. How many people ended up going for one solution or the other when they really wanted what many people decided to proffer on their own without any sort of lead-in? So hopefully Councillor Harrow will just clarify that I was trying to mislead anyone. I think Ian would know that I would never do that.
Thanks, Graham.
I would never dream of accusing you of misleading, Graham. We've known each other too long for that. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. There's no other hands up. Okay, so we have to make a decision today. And I take it that we'll be supporting the recommendation that goes forward to the Executive Committee. Okay.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Well, Chair, can I just ask them what exactly that recommendation will be? We've had a discussion, and we will provide a recommendation for consideration. So, because I certainly don't want there to be any suggestion coming from this committee that myself and my colleagues who have spoken about the inadequacies of this in any way support what has been proposed. So can I just ask that will not be interpreted as support for the paper? And what I would ask for specifically, and I think has been agreed, is that we get the costings around how much this consultation exercise cost, and that is put before the Executive Committee. That's what I would like to be taken from today.
The official has agreed to do that, Joe, so that'll be done. Right. I mean, my interpretation is we are putting forward the recommendations from the people who responded and the factual to the Executive Committee. That's what my view is.
Well, okay, but what the paper states is note and discuss the contents of this report and provide a recommendation for consideration by a future Executive Committee. So I would just like it to be noted, if everyone's, and I take your point, the officials have agreed to do it, but the recommendation that I would like to come from this committee is that the costs of the consultation exercise are put before the Executive Committee in their considerations. and I would not like there to be any suggestion that that this committee has endorsed that the proposals here, because if that is the suggestion, I'm going to have to call for some kind of vote.
Okay, could I bring in Colin, then Jerry?
Thank you, Chair. Just if it assists members, I think we've done part of the recommendation today. There's clearly been a discussion on the paper, but if it assists Cambuslang and Rutherglen Area Committee, their recommendation that was put forward and not disputed or voted on was to support the results of the consultation. So I suppose if there's a recommendation that Councillor Fagan's obviously highlighted, obviously you want to put to the executive committee, and I'll give you a commitment now within that executive committee paper, there will be detail of the cost of the consultation, hopefully well before executive committee. I'll share that with members over the next couple of days if I can pull it together. But I think the committee, again, just comparing to the meeting yesterday, the question is, are you supporting the recommendation, supporting the results of the consultation and putting that to committee? That is, I suppose, the recommendation that you have to maybe come to a view on. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Colin. Jerry.
Thanks, Chair. Chair, we're going to be crystal clear here. Certainly, and I would hope other councillors would support the Labour councillors on this Teams meeting. We are not supporting charging for permit. That's a no. We've been very consistent to the people that contacted us. And there's the emails I've got for constituents. I showed them at the time. And it's certainly a lot of angry people out there. So Labour will not be signing up to any backdoor way of getting this through by saying East Kilbride Area Committee agree with everything in this document. Because if we do that, then we're agreeing to parking charges, and we're not agreeing to parking charges. Simple as that. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Jerry.
So if we have to find a form of words, we better do it before we pass this report, item 6. Thanks, Chair.
So far, I've got Jim Bortaw, John Anderson. These are two names that I can see. Jim?
Do we actually need to recommend approval? Can we not just say that we've noted and discussed it, and then it will be up to the executive to do what they want with the report?
The wording is submitted for decision. You finished there, Jim, or you want to add in?
Sorry, it says note and discuss the contents and provide a recommendation. What I'm saying is, can the committee not just agree to note the report or discuss it and then leave it to be discussed and decided at the executive or full council for that matter?
Okay, thanks for that, Jim. John Anderson?
Chair, I'll move that from this committee we recommend the same as Rutherglen and Cambuslang, that we support the result of the consultation that people have voted on, and I'll formally move that.
Do you have a seconder?
I'll second that, Chair.
Okay. Do we have an alternative?
Yes, Chair. I would like. Sorry.
I've got my hand up as well. Sorry,
Sorry, David. I can't see you. Can't see your name. I'll bring David in first in case he's.
Right. I'm just like to question what basis that you're saying that the area committee takes a decision today. Now, I'm all for area committees having more powers, but in reality, this isn't an area where we've got, as an area committee at the moment, get any powers to say that we support this or don't support it, because if we say we support it, it means that we should be implementing it, and it's not for us to say that this will be implemented, because it then goes to the executive committee. I think Jim Bortaw hit it in the head and said that we note it and we've made comments and observations, particularly Joe's and Jerry's point about the cost of the consultation, and Colin's agreed that that would be included in a future executive committee report. But to actually say that we, the East Kilbride Area Committee, support the implementation is a false premise, because we've not got the powers to do that. That power only comes from the Executive Committee.
Thanks for that, David. I'm purely commenting some paper says submitted for decision. Joe, I think Joe was in.
Yeah, I was going to, because even that wording there around supporting the outcome of the consultation, or even that just wasn't right because of the reasons that David had put forward. I'm quite happy because what I assumed is that the flavour of the discussion would be fed back to the Executive Committee in some way. That's what I was interpreting from the way that was written, and I was just concerned about some of that language that was being used. So my suggestion would be simply that we note the results of the consultation. I think that's what Jim Wardhall was suggesting, and I would like it to be put into the minute that we request, and the commitment's been given, so there should be no objection to that we request the cost of the consultation exercise is put before the Executive Committee. So I would move that we note the results of the consultation without offering any opinion on whether we agree with them or not. And that's for a decision-making committee, as David Watson rightly said, and that the costs of the consultation exercise should be placed before the Executive Committee when they make their decision. That should be the outcome of today's discussion.
Yeah, thank you for that. Gladys.
Chair, I'm just hearing everybody saying exactly the same thing. We aren't a decision-making committee. I think all we're saying is we accept what the survey said. We can't say, right, whatever all the people that responded, we take it with a pinch of salt. All we do is we say we accept that, and it moves on to Executive Committee with the costs, with any decisions that we, some of us, we don't like what the people said, or we want to change it now, whatever. But it's not our decision. I think we say we've read the paper, we've discussed the paper, and now we pass it over to exec for decision. I think we're all saying that.
Yes.
Okay, thanks for that, Gladys.
Yeah,
David,
point of order. Can we get some clarification? What is the role of the area committee here, and what powers have we got in this? Because, quite frankly, I don't see us having the powers, much as I'd like the area committee to have powers to take the decision to support or not support this. The reality is we can note it and pass it on to where the decision is going to be taken. And it's right that we've had the discussion. We've had the discussion, but I don't think it's right that we then are asked to take a vote for or against it. And despite what John Anderson and Joe were a counter motion, I would suggest that is not constitutional, but maybe you could get some advice from some officers on that.
Is Helen still with us?
Hi there, yes, I am indeed. And many apologies, still being slightly new. I have asked my colleague Tracy to come in as well, but I'm not sure how much of this she's heard. So I'm not sure if she's able to comment or not.
Yeah, I've just come into the end of the discussion, but just looking at the report that we're on, obviously it's asking the area committee to note and discuss the contents of the report and provide a recommendation for consideration at the executive committee. So it would be the executive committee that has the decision-making role in this item.
Thank you for that.
Colin has his hands up.
Colin.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and Tracy, thanks for that as well. Again, without a doubt, we have done part of the recommendation to have a discussion. I would just draw attention to, we've got 4 area committees to take the same results to. So we've done one yesterday, we're doing one today. And what members have been asked to today is to provide a recommendation for consideration by a future executive committee. So in terms of what that executive committee paper will look like, it'll be largely like the kind of paper that's before you today. There'll be a section on in what was discussed at the area committees, all of the matters that were discussed, covering the costs, the need for a third question, and it will note that Rutherglen area committee recommended X, East Kilbride committee recommended Y, Hamilton, Clydesdale, whatever, and then that will come together Now, clearly, if all area committees had said, yes, this is great, that's the recommendation that would be going forward. We've done one. We've done clearly today. There's obviously debate ongoing. Hamilton and Clydesdale may have another view, but once all those views are pulled together, officers will assess that. We'll come together with a recommendation, whatever that may be, and that's what will go forward to the Executive Committee, perhaps for a further discussion, and for the Executive Committee to come to a view if there's not a comprehensive one way or another. So I think, to be clear, and I'm certainly not a committee clerk or on that side of the business, but you're not been asked to approve the implementation of a £10 charge today. You've been asked to put a recommendation forward in terms of how the survey results are being accepted or not. Hope that helps, Chair, a little bit. If not, I'll happily try and answer a bit more. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, Colin. I'll get Jerry then. Joe.
Yeah, well, with all due respect to you, Colin, that's not what it says. If we endorse this paper today, we're endorsing the people had two options. The first option, whether you wish to stay in the parking zone and pay £5 per year administration charge, or whether the parking zone removed. So if we endorse this today, we are saying that the people in my ward and in Joe's ward, which are the biggest parking zones these two zones, we're committing them to a £5 administration charge, and that's not what we're in the game for. And by the time it goes to the executive, and this is something that's creeping in to this council and has been since the SNP administration took over, everything's going to committees here, committees there, and then when it gets to the executive, who are the governing body of South Lanarkshire Council, the deal's been done. Because it's going to the 4 area committees. That wording will be in the 4 area committees. Cambuslang and Rutherglen yesterday, and I hope my Labour colleagues didn't vote for it yesterday, are voting to include, if you want a parking permit, you'll pay a £5 administration fee. It's a point of principle, and Davy Watson's correct. We're going down a slippery road here, the way this is getting construed. It's very, very smart and very fly, but it's not going to work, guys. Dead simple.
Okay, thank you, Jack. Joe.
Thank you.
But I was just going to say, I think that there was I suppose it was the procedure or the practice in this council. When something came forward of this nature and we're not expected to take a decision, it would appear as an item for noting. And that would be straightforward. We can note the results of the consultation without ever having to express a view as to whether we accepted them or not. And to come back to Gladys, that's where I think there can be a consensus today. What concerns me is some of this language around we're supporting it. The term's been used now by John Anderson and Colin by yourself, that we're kind of supporting the findings, or somehow endorsing the findings. I don't want to do. I can note the findings. I don't want to do anything that legitimises an exercise that I think, for all the reasons that the 4 Labour councillors have set out today, is fundamentally flawed. So, I mean, I think we can find a consensus around noting the paper. I think we can fit that, because to be perfectly honest, this should have been an item for noting. It shouldn't have been an item where we have 4 different area committees potentially making different recommendations, and the policy making committee doesn't make a decision. And that's all I was proposing in my motion. So in that sense, I suppose we're similar to Jim Wartaw. The only other item was to say I think it would be useful to include in that, if you were looking for some feedback from this committee, the request for that, the information I requested earlier to be provided. If people don't want to accept even that, then surely all we can do is just note the report. I do not want there to be any sense coming out of this that we are endorsing a flawed exercise.
Okay,
it just can't happen.
Okay, thank you. Right, so we either need to just do that, or we need to halt for a break, because we've been going for an hour now. So what do you want to do?
Is mine?
I think keep going, actually.
Chair, Chair, I think we should be taking a break, please. We've got interpreters here. This has been going on for an hour and 5 minutes. We've got, things in place for a reason.
Right, okay.
So I don't think MD should be put out in any way. So we should most definitely be stopping for a break.
Yep, I'm inclined to agree. So we'll break.
We should have a 5 minutes break.
Yeah, we'll break for 10 minutes. Come straight back. Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
on the table is that we
Sorry,
agree
Chair,
to.
can I?
Sorry, Helen.
Very sorry, Chair. I
No, not
just
at all.
need to quickly, for procedure, run through the Sederant as we've had a break. Thank you. Can I check that Councillor Anderson is back with us?
I'm here.
And Councillor Buchanan?
Yeah.
Councillor Campbell? Oh, no, he had to leave, sorry. Councillor Convery?
Here.
Thank you. And Councillor Cooper with apologies. Councillor Dorman?
Here.
Thank you. And Councillor Dryber?
Yeah, I'm here.
Councillor Fagan?
Here.
Councillor Ferguson?
Yep, present.
Councillor Gray?
I'm here.
Thank you. Councillor Harrow?
Here.
Councillor MacDonald?
Yeah, I'm here, Helen.
Thank you. Councillor McAdams?
Present.
Councillor Miller?
Here.
Councillor Scott?
Here.
Councillor Wardle?
Here.
And Councillor Watson?
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Helen. Right, just to tidy this up, could we agree that we note the report? Would that appease everybody?
Yes.
Agreed.
We don't want anybody getting laryngitis.
Agreed.
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 No, there's a hand come up. I don't know who it is.
It's myself, Chair. I think just to note the reports, maybe minimising it slightly. So I think we could note the content of the report and revert back to the Executive Committee for further consultation and decision, just to kind of widen it out a little bit, because we can't make a decision, but we can note the report and revert it back for a decision-making body.
Yeah, that's where it was
without
going.
agreeing anything.
That's where it was going, Hugh, was the Executive Committee. So just making it as short as possible to get everybody to agree. Okay, so we're quite happy with that. I've noted the report.
Agreed.
Councillor Miller's got her hand up too, Chair.
Gladys.
Chair, I don't think we can minimise the decision. You know, these 1,300 people that came back. I think we've got to accept, in terms of noting the report, I agree with what Hugh says, you know, to accept and welcome that so many people responded to that and that we're listening to them and we're not just playing politics. You know what I mean? When I don't know, see politics, I don't know. As Hugh says, you know, rather than just noting the report, that we accept and welcome all the responses that we got. It's very rare that we get, you know, such a high response.
Well, that's all the hands are coming up again.
Aye.
Right, we'll get Graham Scott, Jim Wardhaw, and somebody else. I can't see who else it is.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I think your solution that we note was excellent. I was happy to go along with that. I mean, I accept that there's a degree of what Gladys is saying that I agree with, that but by noting it, we're not in any way disparaging the views of the people. We're just saying we note the report and we move on. We're not disparaging anyone or ignoring anyone's opinion. We're just noting the report and we move on.
Let's sit down, Jimmy. Okay, thanks for that brief input. Jim Wardhaw, then Joe.
I mean, we it's not a decision that we can take. It's got to be taken by the executive. I think if we just stick to, we note the report, and it's up to the executive to deal with it.
Okay, thanks for that, Jim. Joe.
Just so you had a perfect solution there, and just to agree with what's being said, there's a wider point coming out of here about how this has been done, and too often we end up having these 20-minute conversations about procedural points rather than the political points. I've made the political argument clear. I don't think this should have been an item for decision. That's the message I take from this. This should have been an item from noting from the start, and the committee can be used as a sounding board. So I think the maximum consensus and to bring this to a merciful end, I think would be to agree that we simply note the report and allow the political discussion to take place. If not, if there is any attempt to go and put in political comment or the rest of it, then we'd have to put forward an alternative. And I don't think that's where we want to be as a committee. So let's note it, and we'll have the argument at the executive committee who actually make the decision.
Thanks for that, Joe. Jim, is that a legacy hand?
Sorry, yes.
Thank you. I'm going to cut the next hand off that comes up. Right, can we take it? We've agreed that we've noted the report and it will go to the executive where we know it's going to go.
Agreed.
Agreed. Jim, your hand's up again. You're going to get it. Right, thank you very much for that. Right, we've got one last item.
It wasn't a hand, by the way, it's a paw.
Right, one last item is the community grant applications. Can we just take them all together? Because we've all read them. Is that agreed?
Agreed, Chair.
Agreed.
Thank you very much.
Agreed.
And I've no urgent business. And I'd just like to wish you all a happy Christmas and a happy New Year. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair.
Vote of thanks to the Chair. Vote of thanks to the Chair.
The chair.